Hey everyone, welcome to the GrowVC Everyone Funding Startups podcast. I'm Brett Bivens, and with me today is Alan Moore, who is joining us to discuss his new book, No Straight Lines. Alan, welcome to the podcast.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Brett. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. You've written numerous books in the past, and your new book, which I found to be very interesting, I just finished it, so thanks for sending that over, discusses the changing tides in our society from kind of an economic and cultural sense. How we have these institutions and this intellectual infrastructure that was designed for a much less complex and actual linear world, as you call it, and how things like creativity and community and transparency are rapidly pulling us out of this old way of life and into a kind of a completely new one. So hopefully I did the theme of your book justice with that explanation. Before we kind of dig into some of the ideas from your book, can you maybe give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, I come from the world of marketing and communications, and I worked on the creative side there. But in fact, it was a very kind of non-linear journey I've had. I've worked in many countries in a whole variety of different roles. And in a sense, that benefit enabled me to really kind of get to grips and see and think about culture and communication and technology and media, which was kind of initially the kind of world that I was working in. And then about 11 years ago, became very interested in the rise of connected communication technologies and their impact on large mass media systems, TV, radio, you name it. I ended up writing a book called Communities Dominates Brands, Business and Marketing Challenges for the 21st Century. And in that, really, we started to unpick and discover actually this very intimate relationship between people and technology and society and how they affect each other and what it means and what drives these things. But I kind of left that world a long time ago when I realized that, in fact, there was actually something much, much bigger happening, and that really interested me. And as a consequence of that, became also a lot more involved in entrepreneurship, innovation, innovative companies. So I've started on the board of, a whole variety of different companies, as well as speaking, advising as well. So it's been, quite an extraordinary journey in many respects. Absolutely.
And with your recent book, can you maybe give us an overview on the book and why you decided to really write about these topics in the book?
Yeah, so in a sense, the argument is in the book that we've reached the edge of the adaptive range of our industrialized world. It's been it's done a lot of great things for us, but unfortunately now it's presenting us with what I call a trilemma of social, organizational, and economic complexity. Partly because the organizations that we've designed and created and built, the societies that we create and built, were created and designed, for a world 150 years ago that was a lot less complex. And in a sense, we are, drowning in a sea of complexity. And that when you really start to look at this, you understand that the reason why I talk about a trilemma is because socially, organizationally, and economically, these three things touch every single one of us on this planet, and they're all deeply interlinked. However, what I do say is that we are kind of now in this sort of a midway point, no further than that, between the death and life of two ecosystems. The world of a linear world, which is in a sense dying, and a kind of non-linear world, a network world, which in fact is evolving and growing. And really what I say in the book is that we truly do have the tools, the technologies, the process, the language, the possibility to really create our world where we can have, better, more sustainable societies, better running organizations, and certainly, vibrant economies. I'm a great and passionate believer in vibrant economies. I just happen to believe that the type of kind of capitalism that has been running our world for, the last 20 years at least, is a form of fundamentalism which has kind of, done a lot of bad things to us. And, the reason why I wrote the book, in a sense, was I really felt that it was important to try and make sense of it myself. I mean, hence the subtitle, Making Sense of Our Nonlinear World, because my view is that, if you can't make sense of things, then you don't know how to act properly within the world that you live in. And by showing people that perhaps through this literacy and language, these tools and technologies and processes, you can see that, in fact, we can create a much, much better world. And I really felt it was important to share that view and perspective with a broader audience.
So that was a big part of the book that I saw, was the idea that we need to make sense of this world that is constantly changing. We see it every day with how much information we're able to access, how networked we are as a society. And we still, at the same time, are seeing these old institutions that, large parts of Europe and the United States are still entrenched in this world that seems to be, like you said, designed for 150, 100 years ago. Does this give the developing countries in places like Africa and Asia a leg up in building this new world for themselves, opposed to areas like Europe and the United States?
I think that, the big challenge we've got here is that, large-scale institutions, it doesn't matter whether it's in education, healthcare, organizational structures, have huge amounts of vested interest in staying alive. And, of course, in places like Africa, what you're seeing is this extraordinary explosion of innovation using lightweight communication technologies, particularly, say, in the mobile space, to really think about how their country can evolve and develop. And I find huge inspiration from that, in fact, by being really literate with understanding how these technologies can work, that we have an ability to totally redesign and change the way that economies work, how organizations are structured, how they can run leaner and faster, how they can deliver, better information, better knowledge, better services, in a way which our current kind of, incumbent institutions are really struggling to comprehend and understand.
Yeah, and that goes a lot to kind of transparency where, everything's accessible to everybody. And you talk about kind of an open society a lot in your book that relies on creativity to move us forward and to innovate. How can we teach creativity to people from a young age, and how can we continue to develop our creativity as we get older and more advanced in our lives?
Well, I think that the open society is something that you can. I definitely think that creativity is a very important part of the world we're going forward. I mean, can you teach it? I'd rather use a word other than creativity. There's a great quote by Picasso, who believed that we were all born creative. It's just that by the time we came out of school, we'd had it educated out of us. Mm-hmm. I think that, in a sense, this idea of being always open-minded, I think that the open society is about that ability to be open to new ideas. But I think it's also about this idea about open innovation, open co-creation, open source, open legal frameworks, where in a sense we understand that we create a better world by what we share with each other. Whether that's knowledge, whether that's wealth redistribution, whether that's data, whether that's common pool resources. And the open society is really premised and built upon the pillars of trust. And that, in a sense, is the real bonding agent in what makes communities and societies really work. And it's interesting, I think, that we're using the online world to kind of rediscover that old idea, the old idea of mutualism, which is also a kind of really a part of the open society. And I think that, again, we see a lot of young people and young organisations naturally kind of entering into this space where they feel very comfortable with it.